right, good morning, and I want to thank you all for participating in the 27th Annual ARC Industry Forum, and thank you for sticking with us through Thursday morning. My name is Tim Shea. I'm a senior analyst at ARC Advisory Group, and the topic of this discussion today is the oil and gas transformation, and I'll talk about a little bit more detail. It's on a couple of different levels in terms of how the industry is transforming. A little bit of housekeeping. They ask you to, try to, mute your phones. There's an app on you can provide feedback on the session and also on the conference itself, so we appreciate any and all feedback you can provide. And obviously, you've probably been using the ARC app to get updates and do networking and set your agendas and things like that. Again, silence your devices, and then save your questions up to the end. We've got a couple of good speakers, and then we're going to have hopefully a lively and interesting and informative panel discussion as well. So basically, as you're all kind of aware, oil and gas is a relatively volatile market. It's, and I try to look at the 5-year forecast. It's always interesting because you can go look, companies can go up and down 30+% a year in terms of revenues and things like that. So it makes it a little bit interesting to try to do a 5-year forecast. So you try to, take in all the data points and get there. But basically, the long and short of it is that over the last, certainly since the lower for longer oil environment situation, most of the IOCs, the NOCs, and the independents have been, really striving to dig within themselves, and in some cases, I think, go outside their comfort zone in terms of using new technologies to try to optimize their operations, lower costs, reduce NPT, increase, obviously, profitability. So we're seeing a growing number. It's funny because when I first had my first ARC forum about almost 10 years ago, one of our major IOC clients come out of one of the presentations that Andy had given on IoT and connected car, and I remember that guy saying, I can't go back to my people talking about this BS, and then after the oil prices tanked there a few years back, we did a project for that company where we went out and looked at a couple hundred analytics companies and narrowed it down to an RFI. So it just shows you that that the market dynamics can certainly change things, and companies have to reassess their business models, certainly their operational outlook. We're seeing a lot of uptick in terms of machine learning and AI in terms of, where it's seeing a lot of value. Obviously, rotating equipment, I always thought was kind of one of the lowest hanging fruit for the benefits of using, digital technologies to help optimize, to increase energy efficiency, to if you're talking about artificial lift optimization or drilling optimization, there's been a lot of some really good strides there in terms of operational improvements. Obviously, you've probably heard a lot about digital twins, and now that kind of is morphing into the industrial metaverse. We'll see how that all unfolds, but I think it's certainly the basic theme. I think is that the move towards digital is really it's really becoming table stakes for the most of the operators today in order to really manage the volatility of oil and gas prices. So I always tell them, look, you can't necessarily control the whims of the market, in terms of oil prices going up and down, but you can certainly try to control your costs and increase your efficiencies and reduce NPT and things like that. So I think those are things that we're seeing a lot of activity in that area, and it continues. I think a big thing what we see was going to be in the future connected workers. Obviously, the pandemic kind of accelerated that whole theme of that, and I remember looking at when I worked at my old company in the late 90s, I was looking at wearable technologies and talking to the military about future force warrior and IFF and biophysical monitoring and smart fabrics, interacting, tourniquets in the uniform or something like that. And I haven't really tracked it, but I'm sure that they're, some of these special forces guys are using some of that technology that we were looking at. I always chuckle because this is back when we were, looking at smart watches and Fitbits and things like that. And I always chuckle. I say, it only took them 20 years to get here, but So, anyways, it just shows you that that technology sometimes can take time to evolve, but really the key I want to say is that the situation with the pricing, and now you have the move towards energy transitions. A lot of these companies like Total Energies and Equinor, they're all BP, Shell, they're all making a move towards becoming an energy company, and they're trying to make that transition. So ARC, we have a whole energy team that's focused on trying to help these guys out. Should be a lot of exciting things. And one of the things I'll plug here is autonomous operations, and I see that drones and robotics will continue to play an increasing role in that regards. And there's actually I have a session here at 10:30 with a couple of people talking about their use of drones and their operations. Patronus is one of them, of course. So that should be a pretty exciting session, and I encourage you to attend that if you can. Here's some, I mean, I don't want to go through too much time because we got some good speakers here, but basically there's a lot of applications that we see where, people are benefiting from digital technologies. I mentioned, artificial lift optimization, drilling optimization. The big thing I want to kind of focus on here is on asset integrity and then the sustainability angle, because that's really kind of an important area that companies, both from a ESG perspective and just from a good corporate citizenship type perspective, trying to really look for ways where you can minimize your carbon footprint, and that could be just becoming more energy efficient, could be doing a better job on LDAR with leak detection and repair, and things like that. So there's a lot of ways that companies are trying to use technology to help them in that regards. This is I just wanted to kind of throw a little bit of a fancy chart because I tend to have just basically plain Jane bullet points, but we're seeing a lot of, there's obviously a lot of activity going on in terms of digital twins, and I think that the key thing that I want to talk about here is that I think that digital twins can play a role in trying to help perhaps break down silos, to help people integrate, get access to data to the right people at the right time. And I think that the one thing that I've learned about, at least talking to people about digital twins, is that people don't tend to realize that, you can build a digital twin, but you got to maintain it, sustain it. That involves data quality, data governance, things like that. Those are important issues because, as the old expression says, garbage in, garbage out. So you really try to focus on some of those basic blocking and tackling aspects in terms of using a digital twin, and who knows, maybe in the future it'll be now called the metaverse. There's obviously the ongoing key business challenges are things like optimizing production, lowering cost, reducing NPT, obviously maintaining and increasing profitability in these challenging times. There's obviously in oil and gas with a lot of disparate and distributed networks and assets. You've got a real challenge in trying to. I used to say, I hate to use the term dysfunctional orchestra, but that's when I used to look at especially a lot of these big, large oil and gas projects. You get multiple contractors, and you've got like an ecosystem, and they don't necessarily all play on the same page. So people are trying, companies that we'll be talking here later on today, or trying to find ways to help companies, get access to the data, visualize it, in an actionable way, and to help companies to better act on it. Obviously, everybody knows about the great crew change, which is a lot of the gray hairs retiring, and then how do the companies, that are facing competition for recruiting from, Google and Amazon and other companies like that, how do they, get good talent to come in here in oil and gas? And I think a lot of those kids grew up with, with the app. So that's why I think we're seeing a lot of companies, developing platforms where you can plug in different apps. And I think that's kind of, it's a way to try to attract that younger generation. And obviously, I think an increasing focus will be, going forward is the, tracking and monitoring and recording and reporting on your ESG scorebook. And you'll have, I think that'll be an issue that, hopefully they'll come up with some key standards and organizations where people can say, they have an ESG rating and it's, it's sound, it's true, it's based on rational objectives and things like that. So hopefully we'll see some of that happening in the coming weeks and months. Obviously, the main challenges, a big one is cybersecurity. Obviously, when you talk about digital, you got to have cybersecurity, standardization. I think sort of interoperability was a big problem because you have a lot of different companies, but again, with distributed assets, and they have a lot of different control systems and things like that. So trying to get all that, again, to play on the same page, sort of, is go back to that orchestra analogy, is an ongoing challenge. And I think it's an area where a lot of technology companies can help try to, bridge that gap. Obviously, I talked about the energy transition angle, the sort of social, political, and I guess even increasingly financial pressure from companies like BlackRock and others to get people to really focus on their sustainability footprint. And then obviously system complexity. You're getting, there's a lot of sensors out there, but trying to get those to be, add intelligence to those and actually get the data so it's not stranded, is an increasing challenge. This is just, this is a couple of surveys. It's a little bit dated in terms of data. You can look at this offline. But basically, the question was, what are the objectives in terms of supporting sustainability? And I was encouraged by the safety angle, because when I look at drones and robots, typically the number one driver for anybody to deploy these technologies is a safety angle. I mean, there's obviously benefits that, that can be had through the automation process, but that's really the number one thing. Obviously, reducing emissions, reducing water use, particularly produced water in the oil fields is an important factor. But basically, you want to try to, find ways to, companies to mitigate their carbon footprint to the extent possible. And here again is, I think there's really a tie-in in terms of my opinions about supply chain and sustainability, because, there's all the scope 3, scope 2, things like that. There's a lot of ways that companies can, look at their operations, try to break down the silos and look at it more holistically. And I think that there's a lot of benefit that can be had this company. And then obviously you can see the other technology, digital twins, wearables, AR, VR, 3D printing. So they're all there, and they're all playing a role in the future. I think the last thing I want to talk about is, I think, as we talk about the system complexity and trying to break down silos, in a lot of cases, not everybody has the resources and in-house domain expertise to do that, to integrate all these systems. So I think there's a lot of companies that are going to be relying on partnerships. And the whole thing about my mind is, if no one has the silver bullet to handle any of this digital stuff, I don't care who you are, you just don't have it. You need an ecosystem of partners. And I think that, having strong technology partners that can help companies navigate this transformation, if you will, it's going to be beneficial for the companies themselves, their shareholders, the society, the greater society at large.